There are 3 questions that you're going to ask at the end of every single call. And the last one talks about setting next steps. A lot of times there's this conventional advice in sales that you should always be setting a next step. That's actually a really common mistake because if you finish a discovery call and your prospect literally doesn't care about the problem you're solving, a lot of times they will still agree to a demo because they want to go window shopping. So the way that I'm going to end these calls is with what we call the 5-minute drill. The first question is, do you want to buy? Now, when you ask this, you're not literally going to say, hey, do you want to buy? What you want to do is you want to say something like this. Hey, Nick, honestly, I think there's something here. You mentioned that your employees were really not understanding how their stock options worked. You mentioned that you've had a couple of employees leave for higher salaries, even though they had a bunch of equity on the table. And I think these are problems we're solving. Honestly, between you and I, it's going to take a lot of resources for us to keep going through all these demos, a proof of concept, all this stuff. Is that a problem that you actually feel like is something that your team would realistically invest in? And is it worth spending more time together? Or is this a little bit of like a nice to have? You really want to push them to check off the exit criteria of problem agreement in the stage. Once they say yes, then I can move to the next question, which is, when do you want to buy? In order to know what next step I need to set, I need to understand what is important in terms of when they need to go live. And so I might say, look, it sounds like you're going to do a big comp cycle in Q2 and it's Q1 now. And that probably means directionally, we want to have this thing like contract signed and like starting to implement around February so you can go live in April. Does that directionally sound like the right timing for this kind of thing? Awesome. So what I'm doing is I'm directionally setting go live and contract sign date, but I'm not giving a formal walk back plan yet. That will happen on future calls. And then the final question is, how do you buy? And that ends in a period. It's not actually a question. The key with this one is you always want to suggest next steps because you've sold your software or your product a million times more than they have bought your product. And so here's what that might sound like. Well, awesome. Look, sounds like we're directionally aligned that like this is a problem that's worth solving. Usually the next step from here is we would want to make sure that you feel like we're the best equipped to solve that problem, aka solution agreement. And the way we would accomplish that is we would go through a 60-minute deep dive demo with you and probably one of your other peers, maybe your director of compensation over there in EMEA. From there, if that goes well, we would do the same thing and we would bring that proposal up to Jane, your chief people officer. Does that sound about right? And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, here's how people have usually bought in the past. Here's the next step and what we're trying to get in the next step, the exit criteria. And then here's the next step. What are we going to do 2 calls from now to get the stage 3 exit criteria?